merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Charles Yu of VoxPop Games.
Hello. Great to
Hello.
be here.
Indeed, it's good to have you. How are you doing tonight?
Uh, well, it's been a busy week. uh, and yeah, but I'm doing well, and I'm really eager to see what you guys have in store for me.
Indeed. So we'd like to get to know the people behind usually a game or a studio because we have a lot of indie folk here. They tend to sometimes they are the studio, sometimes they're a small team. But you're a bit of a special case, but we'll get to that in a bit. But we do start with this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
When it came to getting into video games on a personal level, I think the first video game that I actually have fond memories of that really got me into gaming as a hobby was The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. I mean, I guess I played like RuneScape and stuff before that, but I really only did that because all my friends are playing RuneScape. I don't recall actually enjoying RuneScape all that much. Um, Oblivion was what made me really start thinking about video games as a hobby. But what made me really decide to become a game designer was actually this Flash game called Every Day the Same Dream. I don't know how much you guys want me to dive into that game.
You can dive into it for a bit, I think.
Yeah, so Every Day the Same Dream is an art game where what I loved about it so much was it sort of used the language of video games against the player, right? There are certain conventions that we pick up playing side scrolling games, right? You always move to the right, you interact with whatever you can, right? But if you actually obey that format in Every Day the Same Dream, what ends up happening is you get out of bed, you get dressed, you get stuck in traffic, you go to work, and then you wake up in bed again, and nothing changes, and you that will repeat over and over. So you have to find simple ways to sort of break the general format, right? So one of those ways is literally like when you reach street level, instead of going right, go left. And when it comes when you say that to somebody who doesn't play video games, um, that might sound crazy, right? They'll be like, "Oh yeah, sure, go left. What's so special about that?" Right? But if you've played a lot of side scrollers, you know that if you go right for three screens, you don't necessarily expect that you can go left at that point, right? Um, and other things like in the middle of traffic, get out and just like get out of your car and stand in traffic, or don't get dressed when you go to work. This kind of thing. Um, that's what I really loved. So that was the first game that really got me thinking about using the mechanics and sort of well, I guess language. It sounds a little pretentious when you say it like that, but like the conventions of video games as a way to actually express something to the player.
Hmm. And did you find fulfillment in this particular form of expression?
Yes, uh, I, I know we're not supposed to get into it yet, but the reason I started VoxPop was really because I wanted to be an indie dev really hard. I
Hmm.
think there's something very fulfilling about building something yourself and being able to control the vision. Because it's like even if you can't do everything that you want, even if the scope is limited, even if there are some elements that are messed up, it's like it's all you're doing. You know, one thing that made it hard to work on in large groups for a project is like if the project fails, it's hard to take ownership of that failure. And if the project succeeds, sometimes you don't. It's hard to take ownership of the success as well. But when you make a game by yourself, it really is yours, and that was rewarding to me.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. And I suppose since we've segued into Vox Pop, we should talk about what that is. Because, this is a rarity for our program. Not the first digital distribution service we've featured, but, they're not all that common, let's say. Um, And from what I've seen, there's a particular aspect of Vox Pop that separates itself from the others, let's say, and it's a
Absolutely.
curious one to me because it's peer to peer. Now, if that term sounds familiar to the audience, it's because that's how BitTorrent works. That's how all of the mid 2000s music piracy things, Kazaa and their ilk worked.
That's also how Bitcoin works. Uh, you guys were
Yeah.
sort of dishing on crypto earlier. Funny thing, one of the first concepts that we pivoted away from with VoxPop was to make it some kind of crypto thing.
Oh,
We're not, but that was one of the original
I'm just
ideas.
trying to visualize a crypto, a blockchain enabled. I guess you could use it like for licensing and stuff.
Yeah, because there it was also whatever. Anyway, that idea is gone. I don't want to spend too much time talking
Okay,
about what we didn't do,
sorry.
but yeah, that was part of it. And we found out that in addition to it being way too damaging to people's equipment, like it's too expensive to tell people to mine this new coin that probably won't be worth much at the start, right? Um, Also, everybody was just really angry at crypto projects. So
Also, it is a little bit, environmentally irresponsible.
oh yeah, a whole lot of reasons. Yeah, and it's just like really hard to get started as well. It's a very specialized skill, so like very few engineers know how to build for that kind of thing. Anyway, sorry, I've gone on this tangent far too long. So the core idea behind VoxPop is to create a distribution platform that will help independent game designers market their games. Right. One of the things that really crushed me when I started trying to sell my own games, and I realized this would be an issue for me as an indie dev, is I am a neurotic introvert and I do not use social media. And what that means is basically no chance for me to be discovered, right? But even if you do use social media regularly, that doesn't necessarily mean you have an audience. And reaching a new audience can be very difficult, especially when you're trying to reach out to a crowded market, as I'm sure you guys can really sympathize with, right? So, um, but indie devs don't really have the money to buy advertisements and sponsor streamers, right? A lot of indie devs, especially solo devs, are sort of funding everything out of pocket. So the idea was is that can we create a system where we can let developers leverage their potential future profits in order to help promote their games now? VoxPop is peer to peer, it's true. Um, but the main core element of VoxPop's business model is profit sharing. Whenever anybody helps a game get sold, this could be through recommendations, through seeding, or through uh, just onboarding new users that then buy games, you get a percentage of the sale that you help generate. This percentage is developer set for user incentives. And what's key here is developers can actually set specific percentages for specific users. Now, we see the interaction going two ways, right? This will allow developers who have no real money up front to reach out to streamers and come to an agreement and say, hey, listen, if you stream my game for your audience, right, use this recommendation link, just put it wherever you would put a Ko-fi or a Patreon, right? Anybody who buys my game from you, I'll give you 20% of that or 30% of that, right? And meanwhile, streaming channels who maybe aren't super large, what we might call micro influencers, these people, even if they don't necessarily have a specific deal with each developer, can still take a profit of what they deserve, right? Everything they generate, all the audience they bring in, they get the share they deserve. And that's really the core idea behind VoxPop, linking indie devs and small streamers together to sort of create this ecosystem.
Certainly a noble goal. Um, though, getting back to the peer-to-peer stuff, uh, I'm curious as to why that particular methodology of distribution. What made that so attractive to distribute these games under your banner?
To be frank, it has to do with overhead. When you're working with cloud services like AWS, which we have to, we're not going to be able to set up a data center. You get charged for the amount of data you handle. So a peer-to-peer structure helps us keep overhead down, and it also makes it easier for us to expand outward, especially into other countries where it can just help with distributing these files.
Okay, that's a sensible answer. Like, and
Yeah, I wish I could tell you it's due to some like it was part of our noble goal, but really it just comes down to the fact that we're a small team of people, and we have limited resources, but we're trying to do the most that we can.
duly noted. And so, how do you find independent developers? Um, how do
Well,
you bring them to your fold? You know, because communication is a big part of that process.
so there are a couple of ways that we reach out to independent developers. One of them actually is just through social media and Twitter. We might see games on Reddit or Twitter that look interesting, and we'll reach out to those devs. And a lot of times, devs come to us these days. When devs started coming to us, and we didn't have to come to them all the time, that felt great. Um, Pre-coronavirus, this was actually before the platform like really existed on the internet yet. We actually would go to like events, right? We went to PAX East, the last PAX East before it got closed for Corona. We also used to go to like oh crap, oh brains blanking. Um, game jams. That's the term. We also used to go to game jams, showcase days, these kinds of small indie dev ice cream socials and stuff. That's another way we used to meet people. And now that we can't meet people physically anymore, what we do also look through organizations. We are part of the IDGA. The IDGA. Go to universities sometimes. Students will showcase their games. And of course, we are partnered with some gaming nonprofits like uh, uh, Able Gamers.
Okay. Um, and how long has VoxPop been around?
Oof. Uh, okay, so we launched our platform in January, but the thing about entrepreneurship is sometimes it takes a really long time to get your idea off the ground. I was running around begging for money in Silicon Valley, like in 2019. um, uh, so I guess it really depends on where you want to start it. But launch was 2 months ago.
Wow, that's shorter than I would have anticipated.
Yeah, you got to show rapid growth these days if you want like any real chance for investors to give you a chance. It's kind of a bear market right now. Nobody wants to take risks, so we just got to push as hard as we can, grow as fast as we can.
I suppose, what are your goals in that particular area? Like, what kind of growth are you, or rather, are the investors looking for?
Ugh, what are the investors looking for? As much as they can bleed out of us, I guess. And as for what we're looking for, I really just want to get VoxPop to break even. My big goal is to push us to a point where we're making enough money to keep the lights on, and we can just keep funding our operations as we move forward. Um, uh, I don't need. Oh, geez. Here's the thing, right? Anything I say on here, an investor might listen in on, and they don't really want to hear somebody say that they don't care if they get rich. But I don't necessarily need to get rich off of this or anything like that for my personal goals. And neither does my partner, Mark. He would tell you the same thing. Our big goal, get VoxPop to break even, get to a point where we can help as many people as possible. Right? You can talk noble goals all day, but if you go bust, you're helping no one, right? So yeah, that's our biggest goal. Break even, get to the point where we're making more money than we are putting into it every month.
Right. And I suppose this isn't an easy question to ask, but it does need to be asked. And how certain are you of this particular goal? Oh.
You know what? I'm very confident in VoxPop. Actually, you sort of go through peaks and troughs with like trying to run this kind of business. I'm sure you guys can relate with your channels,
Hmm.
but I I am so proud of what our team has been able to accomplish in such a short period of time. And the amount of support that we've gotten uh, from our developers and our streaming partners, it's really heartening. And I do believe we'll get to that point. I think we'll get there very quickly.
How quickly?
Hmm. Well, not to sound over optimistic, but in as little as 6 months, I think we could get there.
Okay. That, that is a lofty goal, assuming. Yeah. Um, Here, we should actually talk about the
Adam, what was
game.
that? I think you broke up a little.
Oh, okay, repeating what I just said. Let us talk about the games themselves, um, because they are the star of the show, after all. Um, what are you offering? Especially, what are you offering that can't be gotten getting however you want, whatever the
Can't be
10th,
got.
yeah, cannot be got on other services. Thank you.
So on VoxPop, we do have several exclusive titles that we are trying to push. One of them is actually also the best-selling game on our client. It's called Guardians of Ladino Forest, aka Golf. I love this game, uh, and because it's oh, okay. Well, whatever. Anyway, I'll get to that in a second. But golf sort of plays like a space harrier meets like sports game type thing. It's uh, eh, it's got like a Mode 7 esque, not really Mode 7, but one of those good old like retro Mode 7 esque type visual appeal. Um, to me, golf is I hope I don't sound too rude when I say this. The perfect example of a game that really needs someone to play it to help promote this game, right? One thing that you might struggle with as an indie dev is making screenshots or cutting trailers that look good, right? Especially if you work in, uh, ooh, especially if you're working in a genre that doesn't necessarily film well, like visual novels, or if your game itself has an art style that maybe instills kind of looks shabby, right? You really, really, really need streamers to play your game and actually showcase what the experience of playing this game is like. And golf is one of those games where, yeah, maybe the screenshots don't look perfect, right? The art's all done by one guy who's also done basically everything about the game as well, Adrian Dietrich. But the game plays so excellently. There's so much great audiovisual feedback in
Yeah, I'm
each of
looking
its
at your
elements.
store. The visual style is very. I mean, obviously, you got like vector, you got like scaling and rotation and stuff that you couldn't do, but the art style in general is pretty fairly early Windows
For golf or for Vox Pop?
for golf.
Okay.
Sorry, no, your store looks fine.
uh,
Just a lot of fairly simple color patterns and stuff. It looks good. It's just I know what you mean by
Yeah.
It does,
So
but stills don't show off the best aspects of it.
exactly, right? And there's so much more to games like this than what they look like in screenshots. Um, and so much more to gameplay as well, right? So uh,
Also, I was gonna joke about it had better involve actual golf mechanics, and I can see you have me covered there. So
it does. Yeah, that's the coolest thing about it. Um, I keep talking up this game. I love it. Another game that we've got going on so far. Again, great example of a game that plays better than it looks in stills is Knockout Party. We are trying to set up tournaments for Knockout Party. We're getting our streamers on it. That's one of the things that we're trying to do for our games is get people playing it to just showcase these things to and what they look like to an audience. It's very Gang Beasts style party game. And I mentioned that we are partnered with some gaming nonprofits earlier. That's our partnership with um, Able Gamers actually came about because of one of our exclusives. We have a um, uh, why uh, uh, Weaponeer. That's it. Sorry, I'm having trouble remembering some of these proper names and stuff right now. It's uh, been a long day. So Weaponeer, uh, the developer came to us with a goal, right? He really, really, really wanted to give all of his profits to a charity. He wanted to do as much good as he could with his game. I think it's a very noble cause. Um, and so that's how we came in, and we actually negotiated this partnership deal between Weaponeer and Able Gamers. And thanks to Plug World, we've actually decided to start building a developer charity spec into VoxPop as well, so that any other developers who want to maybe dedicate a portion of their profits to charity can do so as well. Weaponeer itself is such a great pairing for Able Gamers, which, by the way, if, for those of you who aren't aware, Able Gamers is a foundation that um, helps promote accessibility in video games to people with disabilities. Um, uh, Weaponeer is such a perfect game for a foundation like that because the entire game is designed to be played with one major input. So you can play all of Weaponeer with one hand.
that's
And
nice.
the game is itself is excellent. It's a very streamlined dungeon crawler. Again, tuned very well, plays great in motion, and it's coming to our store. It's exclusive.
So how are you crawling dungeon with one input? Does it like in terms of like changing direction, or is it just linear?
If I can be 100% honest, I haven't personally gotten to get my hands on. I helped set up the deal between Plug World and Able Gamers, but this game is still in production. It's a prototype. So I have not personally gotten my hands on it yet. So I don't want to say too much about how it plays.
Fair enough. I'm just curious because I am interested in accessibility in gaming, and it's great if you can reduce it so that it can be played by people who can only do one input. I'm just curious because that's normally a thing where you at least need a couple of things, I think, but we'll see how
Uh,
they did it.
yeah.
Uh, right. And so, what are some of the other exclusives that are on your store?
Hmm. Uh, to be honest, as the CEO, I don't always get a time to review all of our games in depth.
Okay.
I could talk a bit about some of the other exclusive we have, like Smugglers of Cygnus from Longplay, for example. But I would not feel confident in describing how these games play. But yeah, if you go to our store, any game that has the Made for VoxPop logo in the upper right hand corner, these are games that are either exclusive to us or have exclusive content built into them. So, not all of our made for games are 100% exclusive to VoxPop, but all of them have some element that you can only find in VoxPop and nowhere else.
Okay. Can you speak to any exclusive or exclusive content upcoming?
Well, like I said, the main one that I'm personally interested in is Weaponeer. But again, if you go to our website, VoxPop website, and you go to um, like start scrolling down our coming soon list, you can see also the games that we have come soon. Actually, one game in particular that the VoxPop team actually contributed directly to was Elu. So Elu is a Vox Pop exclusive. It's a sort of Super Meat Boy style of super hard 2D platformer. Um, and it and uh, we at Vox Pop, we've been actually working very closely with the development team to help with elements of the tuning and visual style and even story. And it's the first game project that we actually got to contribute to directly, which
How
is
do you
very
spell that one?
exciting. Huh?
How do you spell that one?
Ealu.
Okay.
Another thing that's really cool about Elu is that it and was a challenge for us is that Elu has a level creator. So to help Elu distribute the level to its community was somewhat of a challenge for the VoxPop team because we are building a new platform. But the level of cooperation we were able to foster on this title is very exciting for me personally, and I hope that we'll be able to get to do more of it in the future.
Neat. And tying everything together here, what games of yours, if any, are on VoxPop? You know, you mentioned you started this to because of the indie dev connection and all that.
Ugh, none so far. My games need a lot more tuning before I'd feel comfortable selling them, but that is something that I hope VoxPop will get to eventually is internal development. There are a lot of game prototypes that Mark and I have, and small games that we have that we really want to build out and make into complete products, hopefully. But college student me, when he was like, "Yeah, you know what? No one will help me sell my games. I'll start my own. It'll be great, and I'll be making my own games in like a year or something like." Um,
I like your ratings pineapple also.
that's an invention of our social media manager, Holly. She does great work, and uh, I a lot of people have responded very well to Pina. I actually asked Holly like what inspired Pina. Was there any thought process behind it? And she kind of just shrugged her shoulders and was like, "I thought it would be great to throw sunglasses on a pineapple." And then boom, that's our mascot. Um, yes, but internal development will probably come soon. We have two games in particular that we think are ripe to build out a little bit more and throw on the store. The first is one of my games, Agroculture. It's a sort of PvP multiplayer local multiplayer farming game. Um,
Ah, yes,
it's
PvP farming. Those two things
exactly
that are
PvP farming.
well known for going together all the time.
Oh yeah, so actually that came about because of a joke my professor during like an advanced game design class or something. He said it offhandedly, like, "This is so ridiculous. Battle royale farming. Who would ever think to actually try to do something like that?" And I thought, you know what? That's very funny. I'll make it and I'll call it agroculture. So it's the idea is that the players can't actually attack each other directly. So they have to do things like fight over water resources, block each other's water resources from the water sources, and steal crops when they're fully grown, that kind of stuff.
It's not
Um,
my fault that this pumpkin patch on my land is draining all the water and nutrients from the soil on your side of the fence.
exactly. Um, and I realized describing it that way might make it sound a little slow paced, but it's super quick. It happens in rounds of um, 30 seconds each, and you're trying to win best of three or best of five. Um, the other is, oh shit, I forgot his name for it. Mark wanted a sort of roguelike shooter game. Uh, it's like a zombie apocalypse, but you play as dads and you carry around your baby in like a little harness, and your baby's your weapon. I don't know. It was some sort of pun. I will say uh, Day of the Dad or something. Let's call it. That's a good pun. But I don't actually remember what pun was. But yeah, so these are projects that we'll hopefully be able to develop into our own VoxPop exclusives. But before we can do any of that, we need the platform in place, and we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to support our devs and our streamers.
Okay. Right. So we're running a bit low on time here. So I'll wrap up my line of questions by asking this particular one. It's not perhaps a easy question to ask given its negative connotations, but I do have to ask it because game preservation is an interest of mine. Say VoxPop is ultimately unsuccessful. Will these games be attached to this? I mean, does the peer-to-peer stuff allow the games to live on should this platform not be the success that it could be?
So if VoxPop fails, people will be able to access their titles, no problem. They are uh, stored as executables on the desktop. And we do package them with a bit of software, but it would take one button press to unlock everything and make sure that everyone can keep playing their games, even if VoxPop fails. You won't be able to access it through the VoxPop client anymore, probably, but as long as it's installed on your desktop, you should be able to grab them. As for keeping the peer-to-peer side of the network running after VoxPop is gone, there are no current plans for that, but I suppose we'll talk about it when we get there. The way VoxPop is currently built, it would not be suitable for that, because while we do use peer-to-peer file distribution, like I said, mostly to keep overhead down, we do still have a sort of central database where our client contacts, and that's how we handle DRM. So yeah, no current plans to keep the network going if the company fails. But I suppose with a little adjustment, it would theoretically be possible.
Okay, that is good to hear in terms of the game still being around if, you know, VoxPop is not. Like I said,
Yeah. So,
it's not a subject I like breaching, but, you know, I do have to account for what may be. Like,
yeah, and frankly, any entrepreneur, anyone who's starting a business, like if you happen to be listening to the show right now, you need to be prepared to answer questions about what's going to happen if your business fails, because you can do everything right and things could still go wrong. We certainly weren't planning on this pandemic when we started VoxPop, and it's really hurt the team and our development in a number of ways. Unexpected things like that will happen. And so it is worth considering what will happen to you and what will happen to your user base if things don't work out as planned.
Mhm.
right. And at this point, I'll give my colleagues here a chance to ask any questions that they want to.
I actually have one. Do you have, like, you mentioned there's a central server. Does the client check against that with a peer-to-peer stuff, so it can make sure nobody's injecting anything malicious into the game without you guys knowing?
Yes.
Very good.
I'm not an engineer personally, so I hope you don't expect me to say too much more than that.
Yeah,
But yeah, that was one of the fundamental goals.
Yeah, because we've had a lot of problems with stuff like that with, like, say, BitTorrent or LimeWire. So yeah, other various peer-to-peer things.
We're using WebTorrent, and as I understand it, and I could be off base, but as I understand it, the way it works is it creates a hash for each chunk of the files that it sends, and that's how we check against that, and that's how we make sure that the correct files are being sent.
Okay, that's it from me.
Okay.
I think I asked all my questions just that came up.
I'm good.
All right. don't know if Mac wants to ask anything.
I don't have a lot to say this week. Like I said, I'm pretty much taking an observational role. So, as I told the guys in the background chat, I really want to thank you for being with us. And that was very interesting and informative. And I wish you guys the best of luck because it sounds like an amazing enterprise.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here. And if those of you who might have come via VoxPop like what they heard and want to hear more, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and all the things that you have to do to keep up with a stream in this modern age. Anyway,
you can also find. Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
You can also find us at voxpopgames.com.
Yes. So good luck to you. Hopefully you will find the success that you're looking for, and we wish you the best in that endeavor.
Absolutely.
Petty, play us to the next segment.